Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Well, hello, and welcome again to Doing It Right, the stories that make us. Today, I want to talk about something we're all interested in this world in which we don't know what the new normal is going to be, innovation. You know, it's interesting. I've been asking my clients as I've talked with them throughout this shelter-in-place time, when we go back to work, when you go back to the office, what do you think it will be like? Well, it's been so interesting getting the different answers. And as we talk, every single person has said, we really don't know. Well, today I have an expert with us that's going to talk about innovation and creativity because that's what he does for a living. So I'm just going to introduce this gentleman on my right, Kevin Cummings, and let him tell you a little bit about Kevin, who you work for and what you do to start with.
I will try to do my best.
Okay.
My name's Kevin Cummings. I'm the staff writer and editor for NTX Inno. We're a digital events and media company. We've got a daily newsletter, we've got a online website, and we basically focus on tech and startup scene in the DFW area. So we're a company that's from the American Cities Business Journal. So we work kind of side by side with like the Dallas Business Journal, kind of covering the companies as they emerge before they kind of get to the business level of coverage. So we launched actually in September of last year. So we're still fairly new to the area. It makes North Texas American Inno's 14th outlet across the country. So.
14 outlets.
Yeah.
North Texas Inno, I-N-N-O. That's an interesting name.
Yeah, I think innovation. Yeah.
Innovation, of course. Well, actually, Kevin, that's how I came to have you on the show, because I was talking with Ollie Chadnock, the publisher editor for the Dallas Business Journal, and I said, you know, I want to get someone on the show that can talk about the new up-and-coming people or startups or things that are going on that are really trendy and trending. And so in that respect, what is the trend in innovation that you're finding?
I guess like one of the kind of obvious trends is just like you kind of see every company is kind of like moving into being a technology and like kind of artificial intelligence company. And that's kind of just because with the way things are innovating, you know, software is able to like streamline processes, whether that's in logistics or in just like office management. And then you have kind of the algorithms behind that kind of help with those efficiencies and processes. So I think kind of overall, one of the big things you're seeing, and I think a lot of small and larger companies will say, is that they're kind of, everyone is a technology company nowadays.
And so
I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does. Everyone is a technology company. I'm not. Boy, have I had to learn. And I think that's the thing I want to ask you about for those of us and those listening and watching the show. We are being forced, aren't we, to learn so much more about the new apps, the things we should be on, the Zoom calls. I did an interview with one of our Fox News stations, several actually, on what is the new Zoom etiquette. Now we're not going to meetings, we're going to Zoom meetings, right, Kevin?
And asking if you can hear me about 20 times.
And asking if you can hear me about 20 times, right. And so I'll speak for myself. I have had to learn so much about technology, and it's not easy. So you, being a few years younger than I, what would you tell us would be maybe some first steps to just put our toe in the water to be sure we're keeping up with technology?
I write about technology a lot. I would not say that personally I'm the most technologically savvy person, but I think kind of what you're seeing in general is like a movement towards kind of apps and the digital sphere being just kind of integrated with our physical world.
Yeah.
And so it's almost becoming kind of an extension of that. But kind of what you were saying is like, I don't think it's possible to keep up with every new thing.
I'm glad you said that. Thank you, Kevin.
But I think kind of just having an idea of kind of where trends are going. So, like with Zoom, like you don't have to learn every single video conference app that there is, but, at least knowing how to log into something like that, or just kind of, I think just managing that, that things are going to be moving more online into the digital sphere, and just kind of being aware of kind of like the processes behind it. I mean, I guess like the easiest example I can think of is like my grandmother, like she never wanted to get a cell phone. She never wanted to get a computer. And so by the time that, she was like, when she passed away, like she wasn't really able to communicate with anyone because, everybody communicates through social media and through email and stuff. And she never learned that. So I don't think it's so much like learning every new thing that comes out, but just kind of being aware of trends so that when, something does become like a big thing and everybody switches to using that, you at least kind of are aware of what it is and how it works.
Force yourself to learn something every day, right?
I mean, if you don't, I think in this day and age, if you don't keep up, like you'll eventually get left behind.
No one wants to get left behind. So talk to us about what you are doing as the editor, and maybe some of the new startups that you think are the most creative and innovative would be fun to hear about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, we launched in September. So for the first like 3 or 4 months, I was basically just running around to every event or pitch competition or whatever was going on in Dallas or DFW really. And since it's such a big area, that kind of kept me a little busy. So a lot of it was like, and I can't think kind of how like the startup community works is it's all about like having connections and knowing this person who does this or works in this sphere. So a lot of it was just kind of getting embedded in that community. Now that we've kind of established ourselves a little bit, we kind of start to hear about things like before they happen, or, people reach out to us now. So a lot of it is just kind of highlighting the cool technology and the cool people that are behind it that live in DFW, because you hear a lot about, New York, Boston, Silicon Valley, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here too.
Well, and that's true. We in Texas have, in DFW, we really have quite a large presence in technology. And tell us about maybe 1 or 2 companies that you think are doing some really interesting things.
Yes. I guess first off, I have to give a plug. One of our like big features we do every year is called Startups to Watch, and so we came up with a list. I think it was December or February of like our 20 startups that we thought were going to be like kind of the ones to watch for the coming year. But I guess kind of some from that list. One that really stands out is a company called Canaries, and they basically have a platform that allows employers to kind of create diversity inclusion initiatives and then track their progress and kind of see how that stacks up against other businesses that are similar in the industry. And so I think that just like right now with everything going on is super timely and interesting. And also one of the co-founders, Mandy Price, she's kind of being a Black woman, has dealt with a lot kind of through her professional career. And so that's kind of what inspired her to create the company.
What's the name of it again?
Canaries, Kanarys.
All right.
And she actually is one of only 50 Black women to raise more than $1 million in venture capital.
Wow.
Which, is a startling number. So
she'd be good to be on the show, wouldn't she?
I think she was in that email I sent.
She is. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess another one that sticks out, we did our we have like a monthly feature that we put out, and the one last month is basically we followed one founder of a company for a month, how they've dealt with kind of the pandemic, and so just checking in and out on a weekly basis. And the one that I followed, his name is Farhaj Mayan.
Say that again.
Farhaj Mayan.
Okay, I will try it.
And he runs a company called Kana, and basically they're like the gig economy. They place workers. If you're familiar with like TaskRabbit, So you can like hire workers, but they work for the medical and recreational marijuana industry. So they're based out of here, but most of their work happens in Oklahoma. And he's a really interesting person. He's 20, I think he's actually younger than me.
That's young.
He started his own company. I think this is not the first company that he started. And in the last like month, they've put like, honestly, like I think 1,000 people to work, which, during a pandemic with a lot of people like losing their jobs is pretty cool.
Interesting. Now, did you say you followed him through the...
Yeah, I mean, obviously with social distancing, basically we just would have bi-weekly phone calls and just kind of check in on each other, like, hey, what's been new? How have you been doing? Because we also wanted to get kind of that personal, balancing, like running a company and also just being a human being. So
what did you learn? What did you learn that he was doing?
A lot of it, I think, just came down to honesty. I think a lot of companies right now like want to say that we have this, and nobody really knows what they're doing right now. And I think like being able to kind of step back and say what you don't know is a big advantage.
That's very interesting. What's the name of that company?
Kana, Kanna.
All right. Why is it that the millennial generation is so creative? Why is that?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think part of it is like mentality. And I don't know where that mentality necessarily came from, but I think a lot of it is like mentality. I think, even myself, you see like the younger generation kind of moves around jobs more,
And that's okay, right?
Yeah, and like the culture of a company is more important sometimes than, like the paycheck. So I think a lot of it is just kind of the mentality of our generation and wanting to pursue something that's more fulfilling rather than just successful or financially better. I think it's that willingness to do what you want to do and hope that it works out rather than, just going along with what you think is right.
I want to talk a little bit more about that because being in business as long as I have and coaching leaders, one of the things that I'm told is, oh my goodness, it's not easy to be a boss to this younger generation, right?
We're
Quote
so scary.
Unquote.
Yeah.
You hear that all the time, right? Well, let's reverse that. What's difficult maybe about working for someone that's been around the block for several decades as a boss?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of it goes off of that. If you're used to a certain leadership style and that's worked for you for decades, and then all of a sudden you're trying to deal with something that's completely different. So I think that's one of the difficulties is just like getting stuck in a certain mentality and saying like, well, this has worked, so it will continue to work. And I think that just kind of goes back to like what we were talking about with technology and just constantly having to be able to adapt with the new things that are kind of coming up. And I think the hardest thing about our generation that I guess like a lot of people don't like understand is that like that wanting that work-life balance. And like if the job isn't fulfilling on that level, it could be a good job, a good position, but you kind of need to have the whole picture. And so I think that might be some of like the challenges that, the generational divide might have.
I like that. That's just called pure authenticity, Kevin.
I do what I can.
There you go. Okay. So for you, let's talk about you and what got you into the work that you're doing anyway. When I interviewed you, you talked about traveling around the world and all the experiences that you've had. So just tell us about your background.
Yeah. I guess kind of like my career path started with like really bad poetry in high school.
Bad poetry?
Yeah. I hated math. And so I was writing music and, just bored in class. But my teacher ended up kind of encouraging me to continue along that path. I graduated and then didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, well, I'm already doing this. So I went to school, got my creative writing degree. I think I'm one of the only people I ever meet in journalism that doesn't have a journalism degree.
You never know where you'll end up.
Yeah, so I got that. I graduated from Texas Tech. I came back to Plano, where I was originally from, and just emailed the editor of the local paper and was like, I graduated, I need a job. They hired me on as an intern. So I was an intern flipping burgers and substitute teaching for a few months.
What were you teaching?
Just whatever they needed. I was just kind of a fill-in. So yeah, then I worked for Star Local Media for like 2.5 years, bounced around most of the papers. I've covered McKinney, Plano, Rowlett, Salina, pretty much everything besides like Dallas itself. And then the hours are rough, like being a journalist, things happen.
Sure.
And you're like, I got to show up on a Saturday night. Like, okay. Got married. And so, was looking for something a little more stable. And so I ended up teaching for 3 years in Mesquite, teaching English and journalism out there.
Not getting a journalism degree, but you're teaching
right, yeah,
journalism.
That's teaching journalism.
But you're living journalism, so you can teach it for sure.
Yeah. So after that, I wholeheartedly respect teachers. My mom's been a teacher basically her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tough job, and it can be emotionally draining. And I just kind of got to a point where I realized if I continued, then the only people who are going to suffer are like the kids, because my teaching just isn't going to be at the level that it needed to be. So I realized I needed to take a step back. Ended up traveling the world for about 6 months.
Took off? And
yeah, we can talk about that for a second, but basically did that, took that time to kind of rebuild my portfolio of writing. And then once I came back, I started looking. I knew I wanted to get back into journalism. It's what I really liked. So I started looking for jobs around the area, and this company that hadn't launched yet contacted me back, and so here we are.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it worked out surprisingly well.
That's wonderful. Well deserved. Good for you.
Yeah.
If you could do one thing within the job that you're doing all day and get paid for it, what would you do?
I guess part of the reason why I wanted to travel around a lot too is just I'm really interested in people and their stories. So I guess for me, the biggest thing is I just really enjoy meeting people and kind of hearing, how did you get to this point? Or where did this idea kind of come from? And I just I really like the human aspect of it. So working from home has been pretty much normal, but I do definitely miss that kind of face-to-face that we used to have.
Well, we're hoping it'll come back.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything really interesting to share with us when you were traveling for 6 months? And were you alone, Kevin?
No. So basically, my leaving teaching and my lease at the time coincided with each other. So my wife is a freelance freelance photographer, so she was able to kind of pick up. And so we decided we're going to take 6 months off, and started in Spain, went to Morocco, up through Europe. She has family in London, so we ended up there, came back for a week, and then went to Pakistan for 2.5 weeks. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is really just that people are pretty much all the same. No matter where you go, we do things in different ways, and we might have different customs and ways we go about it. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to be happy and everybody wants to take care of their family, and that just doesn't really change no matter where you go.
I love that. Isn't that true?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is even the more you travel, the more you realize that people are similar.
We all have the same needs. Starting with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right,
that's for sure. Wow, what a wonderful opportunity at your age to be able to do that. And hopefully we can all get back on the planes and visit all these fabulous places.
I was actually supposed to be in Mexico City a week or two ago. So.
I'm sorry. Well, we'll get you back. I'm sure you'll get back there.
Yeah.
What do you do to refuel yourself?
It definitely helps. I'm not quarantined at home alone. I do have my wife. But I would say it's kind of the stuff that I've always done. Reading has always been something I love.
What do you like to read?
Right now I'm reading a book called The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene, which is about it's about like one of the last like priests in Mexico during their civil war, because the communists that were like coming in didn't like priests anymore, and so they were like killing them off. And it's fiction, but that did happen. But it's about like this priest and his like kind of journey, like trying to hide from the army and all that.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, reading, music, play with my dogs and take walks.
Music? What kind of music?
I mean, I hate to say be that person, but like I pretty much like everything except like electronic music. But I play guitar and a little bit of piano. So I do that, take walks, just, calm things, because the world is like crazy right now. So things that help slow the mind down.
Don't we all need that, Kevin, for sure.
Yeah.
So as a writer, and I'm a writer, what kinds of disciplines have you put in place to write as much as you write? And how much are you writing? When you get up in the morning, how much of that day are you spending writing articles?
I would probably say about 5.5, 6 hours a day. Because we do have the daily newsletter, which, so that one comes out at 3 every day. So that one's kind of like a hard deadline at like 2 to get it over to the editor. But I would say depending on the day, we average anywhere between 1 to 3 articles a day. So quite a bit of writing.
And is any part of that easier or more difficult for you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think that it's like going back to your other question, like I have to set a schedule. Like otherwise, like I'm way too scatterbrained to keep things together. So I have to be like, all right, I'm waking up, this first hour in the morning, I transcribe an interview. I have like, basically I just have my schedule of like kind of, I don't necessarily know what I'm going to be writing about that day, but I know like where that will fit into what I'm doing. So I think really keeping that schedule is hard, but and then sometimes you get breaking news, of course, and it's always at like either right when you have an interview or right at the end of the day. So then you get that, but
that's the journalism way of life.
Right. Well, I mean, it's better than when I was covering like government and local news, and then they make their big announcements at like 5 p.m. on Friday. So,
right. Well, for me, I will just say I had to be disciplined. And I read somewhere that Robert Ludlum, the wonderful Robert Ludlum that wrote The Bourne Identity and all of those, I believe it's he that said, you just write every day. Now I'm talking about writing books, which I've been doing. It's like giving birth to a baby, I'll tell you, and totally different than just writing. But that encouraged me. I thought, well, okay, just write something, even if it's not perfect, and it's never going to be perfect.
Right, yeah. I mean, I have those articles where I'm like super proud of it, and like did a killer job on that one. And then there's other ones that you're like, but you just got to keep writing and know that like if you're doing it on a daily basis, you're eventually going to end up with some good stuff. So
and you know what? Do you find that you love it more and more the more you write?
Yeah, and it becomes a little easier. I mean, obviously working with news, we're sticking to factual stuff, but you can kind of learn like where you can show a little creativity here and there, and so that kind of makes it a little more enjoyable throughout the day when you kind of like add your little flourish to it.
Add your little flourish. So what is your little flourish? What's your style?
I mean, it goes back to my background in poetry. So, I mean, whenever I have the ability to use, like adjectives or to like describe a scene rather than just like at, this business park or whatever, I like that. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I do get bored and I throw like poetic meter into some things, but
like
I don't.
What does that mean?
Oh, like like Shakespeare's sonnets are written in an iambic pentameter, which is like da 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 da. So just kind of like the rhythm that it makes. So sometimes I get bored and I'll throw that into like an article, but I don't think anybody ever will catch that or realize.
They don't know that you've done that.
Yeah, it's just something for me.
Well, I think this is fascinating because those of us who write and those who don't write we all have to write something.
Right.
We're writing proposals, or we're writing an article, and now people are writing blogs. But there really is a creative part to it, and there really is a discipline. The other thing, though, that I want to mention before we get off of the writing topic is another thing I learned from a friend who had written at the time something like 43 books. And I was writing maybe my second or third, I don't know. And for me, it's not easy. It is not easy to just sit down and write a book. For her, I guess it was. And I asked her one day, I said, how do you do this? I mean, how do you just keep pumping? And they were
It's impressive, yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed. A little intimidated also. And here's what she said, Kevin. She said, it's my gift. And I thought, oh. I hadn't looked at it that way. So for her, my point is, it was what she was born to do.
Yeah.
It just came for her. It was a gift.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is not necessarily a gift. I have to work at it. So any comments about that?
I mean, it's like any craft. You're obviously going to have to continuously work at it. But I guess I do kind of agree, because like, if I wasn't writing news, I would be writing something else. Mm-hmm. Like no matter what, I'd probably be writing just because it's what I've kind of always done, you know?
It's your gift too.
Yeah. The best case scenario, it's like a form of, a little therapy. So,
that's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like anything you have to have like a passion for something, but
mm-hmm.
you also have to understand it's like a skill that you have to work on,
Yeah.
And so I think just kind of figuring that out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good. I love this conversation. Before I close on this, let me just ask you, who to this point have you really admired in life? Who inspires you?
Oh, that's a tough question. Blanking on things. I guess like honestly, I have to go back to kind of the people that like originally inspired me on this whole crazy journey. That teacher I was telling you about, she was a math teacher, but she just happened to also have a background in creative writing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I ever would have gotten kind of started without that. And just like other mentors that I've had along the way. My parents for letting me, get a degree in poetry rather than in like engineering or something like that. And then honestly, my wife is amazing. She runs her own business. So I'm always just impressed by like her ability to keep things together and still be creative. Whereas I'm trying to like be creative and then hold things together. So
well, it sounds like you two are well matched.
Yeah.
That's great. So how can we find you? Should the people who are watching or listening want to know more about the publication and the people that you're interviewing that are so innovative? How can we find you?
Our website is NTX Inno, NTXINNO.com. And on there we have like a little newsletter link. So if you want to sign up for our newsletter, that comes out at 3 every day. But yeah, NTX Inno, it has links also to like all of our other outlets. We have Austin, Colorado, some on the East Coast and the Midwest. So really kind of our focus is going into like, the reason why we're not in like, Silicon Valley or something like that is we don't think we would be adding, a huge value to the ecosystem. So we kind of focus on areas that have a lot going on, but don't have like a lot of the recognition. So, but yeah, it has access to all the content that we've done. None of our stuff is under a paywall. So, yeah, ntxinno.com.
That's really
everything.
Thank you, Kevin. That's really a good resource, because obviously doing it right goes all over the country and maybe the world.
Yeah, and a lot of the companies that we write about, just because they're based in say like Fort Worth, doesn't mean that they're not getting funding from Georgia or something like that. So
Exactly. Well, I'll just add that in reviewing the website and talking with you and talking with Ollie from the Dallas Business Journal, you're doing some really good stuff. And I've read what you write, and you are a good writer. So thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been fun.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Fun. And for those of you, as we end, don't forget to do something really important. If you're enjoying the shows, I would love for you to hit that red button that says subscribe. It's so interesting, Kevin, and I'm caught doing the same thing. I'll listen or I'll watch a podcast, and I too think, sometimes I'm in a hurry, but it matters.
It does. It helps.
It really does. So please subscribe, hit that button, and share. And for now, I want to thank you and tell you that I still am offering a free gift for those of you who would like to read an ebook that I wrote about how to live in this disruptive world. It just happened, Kevin, that I wrote that last year, and then here we are. So I thought, I'm going to put that up and
perfect timing.
Yeah, it is perfect.
Not perfect time. I don't know how you want to put that.
Well, both. And so it is a free gift. All you have to do is go to my website, valerieandcompany.com/gift. valerieandcompany.com/gift. And until next time, stay authentic, be careful, stay healthy, and just be who you are and live with your strengths and your gifts. That's what life is about. Find your purpose. So here's my Valerieism for today. Pretty simple. Learn something every day. Your brain will thank you. That sounds so simple, doesn't it? I think many of us during the times that we're in now are learning a lot online. I, for one, am taking all kinds of webinars. I talk to people every day who are saying, I just learned something from a new course that I found online. And then there are people who aren't. So all I'm going to say is, the brain feeds itself. There's a whole lot of brain research about what happens when we learn something new. I'm just going to say it's inspiring. It's fuels our creativity. You never know when you learn something that you'll be willing or able to share with someone else. So I am serious. Your brain will thank you. Learn something every day. And that's my Valerieism.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.